Hey, New Hope family, it's Pastor Matt with your devotional thought for today. In Ephesians chapter 4, the Apostle Paul writes, "Let the thief no longer steal, but rather let him labor, doing honest work with his own hands, so that he may have something to share with anyone in need." Now, at face value, it might seem as though this verse doesn't apply to the majority of us, because my guess is the majority of us aren't breaking into homes, we're not stealing material items, we're probably not even necessarily stealing intellectual property of other people and proclaiming it to be our own, right? Like, we're probably not guilty of being thieves. So we might think at face value this doesn't apply to us. But there's a principle at work here that I think is helpful for all of us if we'll take a moment to think through this. The reality is that even if we're not thieves, what he's telling them to do is, instead of being a thief, instead of using your hands to steal, replace that practice with something good. Now, instead of using your hands to steal from someone else, use your hands to work. Use your hands to actually build up something. Use your hands for something productive, and then you'll receive a wage for your work, and you can use that to bless others. So instead of taking from others, now you're using what God has given you to be a blessing unto others. And I think that principle can apply to us in all kinds of categories. So whether we're thieves or not, we can find that this principle is a beneficial one for us. Whatever we do in the flesh, we should replace that then with something that is done by the Spirit. That way, we no longer will be prone to giving into our sinful patterns. Instead of thinking, I'm going to overcome this sin by sitting idly by and waiting, and when temptation comes, I'll resist it. Instead, replace the sinful activity, the sinful productivity, with fruitful productivity, with true productivity, replacing it with the spiritual life that we're called to live. And I think that's a benefit for us in our thought life. If we're thinking about things that are impure, instead, let us dwell upon God's word and think about that which is pure. And if we're doing things, if we're actively committing sins in our lives, spend that time instead of going after sinful things and go after godliness. Pursue serving others instead of taking from others. Instead of indulging in selfishness, instead think of how you might use what the Lord has given you to serve one another. And in that way, this passage has a lot of relevance for all of us when we apply that principle, replacing the old with the new that Christ has given to us. So let us strive to put that into practice, brothers and sisters. Let us replace our old patterns with goodness, with godliness, with purity, and see how the Lord works in our hearts through that.